So today's webinar is on the pedagogy of water, designing education to support a better understanding of climate-induced water crisis in India. First of all, I'd like to welcome you all to this webinar. It's the CSE's Development in Action webinar, and today's webinar will be presented by Commonwealth alumnus, Dr. Mansee Bhargava. Mansee is the national president of the Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry for the Water Resource Council. She has founded many initiatives to educate the public on water crisis through visual series. She's also leading on the Wednesdays for Waters and Friday Waters, which are webinar series, and she will be talking to you about these webinars that she hosts. She's also initiated studies on women in architecture and women for waters to address concerns about the weak representation of women in key aspects of the built environment. I'm pleased to let you know that Mansee is a 2005 Commonwealth Shared Scholar from India. She completed her MPhil in Planning, Growth, Regeneration at the University of Cambridge. Mansee will talk a lot about her work in this space, and she'll also introduce herself and give more details about her current role and educating the public in water crisis and water management. I'd also like to let you know that today is Mansee's birthday. So on behalf of the CSE, I wish Mansee a very, very happy birthday. And thank you so much for delivering this webinar on your special day. Over to you now, Mansee.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you so much. And warm greetings to all of you from all over the world who are here today to discuss with each other the relevance of discussing water crisis, which is climate-induced water crisis. And thanks for the lovely introduction. I would like to add to it there that I am an ardent listener and learner. So I strongly believe to be listening well, to learn more. And for last 3 decades, nearly, I'm actually learning, loving, and living the lakes. That's my main research area. But around that, I have developed an understanding and learning for water. I usually don't refer my affiliations because I'm an independent practitioner. So I work at different organizations at different capability. But my parent organization is Environmental Design Consultants, which is led by my husband, Bhargava. And the conversations which we are doing these days is W4W Foundation, which I'm going to talk about through the discussion which I'm going to share with you. Now, the agenda for today is, are we actually doing education on climate crisis in the manner which it should be and how that should be? And I have a take on that, particularly where I believe that water crisis is the main, tenet of climate crisis or manifested through water crisis. And to large extent, the water crisis is manufactured and manipulated. And this is where education or a good pedagogy makes a big role. And the manufactured and manipulated option is coming from the very discriminated society we live in, or I will say the equity issue is huge. And I'm going to talk about some of the equity issues which transcend to gender issues and economic issues and other things. And I strongly believe that we really have to work towards interactive water governance if we really want to talk about integrated management. And especially when we talk about climate crisis, we need to really look at it in a more comprehensive way, because as I mentioned, water is something which we feel every day. And now a little bit from the history and taking something from my own region, and I think you all can relate it from your own other regions as well. We have seen past civilizations flourish and decline, and climate crisis is considered one of the key reasons for the decline of many civilizations. And I'm giving example of Indus Valley civilization, or we call it Harappan civilization, which actually resulted into mega cooling and drought and the death of the main river which on which India actually sits, that is Saraswati River, and the changing course of river Indus and Hakra, and many extinct species going, extinct. Um, Interestingly, after this, actually, we had Ganga becoming the main river. So what I'm trying to say is that, are we coming to that end of civilization because we are really seeing climate change to its extreme? I'm not going to discuss all those temperatures and all because we all are aware about it, but linking it with the water part. So it was there and it is there. That's important for us to understand. And the argument I am trying to make here is how climate change manifestation is actually shown through water. So just giving few examples, sea level rise itself is a water issue. Groundwater depletion as well as pollution itself is a water issue. We talk about many contaminants which are coming there. We talk about ocean pollution. We talk about fossil fuel. We talk about renewable energy, which also requires a lot of water. All these things are really resulting in expediting the whole climate impact. Now, coming to the case of India here, among the G20 countries, we are in the highest red, I will say red zone of climate crisis. Yet we take a decision to postpone to go net zero or to take up climate more seriously. And we have just recently postponed it to 2070. I'm not going to be there in 2070. What am I going to do today, tomorrow, in next 5 years, 10 years? Well, that becomes extremely important. With the climate rising, I mean, UN is already warning all of us. And I just quote this line from recent meeting which happened on IPCC report that the climate time bomb is ticking. How do we come to know it is ticking? And that's where this is an interesting study I thought I must share with all of you, the Yale project on climate crisis communication, which really took a large number of samples from India and really tried to see if people also believe if it is there. And you can see the graph here where Indians do believe it is happening. It is caused mostly by Anthropocene, and everybody's personally realizing it and are worried about it. So it's there. But what is concerning is when we talk about climate crisis and when we think about what me and we can do, it looks like a distant thing. As I was giving example of, as a policy, we have moved it to 2070. So the tenets of climate crisis, if we really take it literally on me and we have to see it from the livability point of view because we are facing water crisis. So that's where I'm really placing my argument, because water crisis actually transcends to a lot of other crises, which are not only for humans, but also for other species. So including extinction, including mass, exodus from one A place to B place. So if climate crisis is distant, which is of course warned at a macro scale, actually the micro scale effect is felt by every one of us. And that is where the water comes into picture. And that is where we can also do a lot of things. If climate crisis is about mitigation, we need to really think if we can do more about adaptation. And that is why I'm talking about that water crisis is a livability issue. It's everyday issue which we face every day. And that's where we can also work. So if most of the literature, if most of the policies are focusing on CO2 and greenhouse gas emissions, and even if you look at the funding which comes for climate change mitigation and adaptation, you will find that we really need to rethink our allocation of budget, rethink our thinking process, and also the way we are communicating climate change. So if mitigation is about carbon, then adaptation is about water. And as I was saying, that adaptation is actually the livable issue, the livability issue, which we have to handle every day. And that is where it plays important role here. So just taking you through the example of India, pardon me, all of you, if I'm just going to show the example of India because that's where my research area also focuses on, and I know the context very well. So it's a case I'm going to present, but I'm sure you can relate it with your own cities and country as well. So the entire anthropocentric approach to even climate change, and if I look at the water policy, unfortunately yeah, is harming the adaptation process more. And that is where we need to really rethink how we steer our water discussions and discourses. Because we see the inherent challenge of drought and floods are actually pushing to other challenges, for example, equity, ownership, sanitation, which is a serious problem. I mean, most of the world water epidemics are related to it. Then gender issue, serious problem. We can see all these are actually cropping out of the water crisis. So it's like a multi-layer issue which we can discuss. So like in India's water crisis, when we talk about for humans and what we are going to consume, we see a lot of things which we talk on everyday basis. But when we talk about the water resource itself, we also see that India is having a large coastal area, and it is highly vulnerable with the sea level rise. And we are already anticipating more than 7 million people to be affected and probably have to be relocated in next, less than 10 years now. The fast depleting and polluting groundwater is a serious problem. The more we are drawing and the more we are pushing into the ground the wastewater, it is making water crisis much more, severe. Then shrinking and polluting water bodies like lakes, wetlands, rivers, the more and more development is actually taking away the land of the water bodies. Then large infrastructure adds to it. And last but not the least, in the resource part of it is the generation of wastewater, and most of it is untreated wastewater, which makes the entire scenario of water crisis even more challenging. So before I really go further, how I usually interact and teach, I'm very keen to hear from someone if you would like to share, how do you teach climate change, water, or how did you learn about it? So I will be very keen to hear one or two responses from our friends and participants who are here. Please unmute yourself or put it in the chat box. That will also work.
Please share your thoughts in the chat box. We have a few questions on the screen. How do you teach climate change? How do you teach about water, and how did you learn about the two? You're welcome to share your thoughts in the chat box or unmute yourself. Just a few keywords on these questions.
I don't see any hand raised. So Eva, may I go further then?
We'll just, yeah.
Yeah, I see one hand raised. Yeah. Yes, Tisha.
Want to unmute yourself?
Thank you very much. So for me, in terms, I think I find making the distinction between weather and climate change a useful way of putting across the message, especially to my students, just, highlighting the differences in terms of weather being a short-term forecast, whilst climate change is long-term. Weather is like area specific, whilst climate change is regional. And yes, for me, such like having such discussions and distinctions around the two is helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to just chip in?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I comment in the chat box. The comment is teaching climate change involves experiential learning and a pedagogical approach that is practical in nature.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so may I go further, Eva? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to share some of the things which I have been trying to communicate with people and learn as well. So it's learning sharing process, which I am engaged in nearly 2 decades now. So I'm going to highlight on some of these aspects, and there are many more tenets of water crisis, to be honest. Biodiversity development, class, and one of my favorite subjects is gender itself being affected personally. Then physical, then agriculture, industry, energy, welfare, health, and how those education can be integrated to even make a holistic module on water education. So coming to biodiversity, an important aspect to learn when we talk about climate crisis, that we have to go past the Anthropocene way of looking at climate crisis. And we have to understand that no other species, then no humans also. So this is something which can be really taught at the basic level, but also it requires to be understood in a high level boardroom meetings. So we cannot continue to talk about, how humans can maximize the profits from the resources. Important example here is how forest lands are shrinking in terms of real good forest cover. This is example of India here, as well as water bodies shrinking, as I mentioned before. And then when we talk about other species who are co-inhabitants, you already see that I have marked it in red list of IUCN, where we have more than 100 species which are going to go extinct very soon in this year. This is the list. So if we really want to get into hardcore teaching water and climate crisis, we have to learn that life of other species on the land and in the water, and this is part of sustainable development goals, ensures human life. So it cannot be other way around, that if human lives, other species live. No, it has to be, we have to just turn it around, the entire narrative for it. Likewise, the development discourse which goes around now, where we do see when we talk about developed nations versus developing and underdeveloped nation, how the discourses go, where a lot of focus is on how to really do a lot of experiments on developing and developed nation. Likewise, when I see within a country, which is a developing country in India, we see the same kind of narrative going between cities and towns and villages. Where we project and we are empowering cities with so much of power, so much of infrastructure, that people are motivated. People have no choice than to come to the city, and that makes cities more struggle to really handle water, to handle climate crisis. And I'm just giving example of how we are changing the narratives of nature, how we are changing the narratives of rural as well as urban. So this is example from my own city. As you see in the picture here, the river, which is a perennial river, which used to be dry half the year, and it used to get filled naturally through the monsoon. But now the narrative is given that, oh, the river remains dry half the year, we are not getting good economy, and so on and so forth. And then we have water coming from 1,500, 1,200 kilometers to keep the river filled for the entire year. In this process, we not only do the water grabbing from the place where the water is drawn from, but at the same time, we completely change the ecology of the river here. And to give an example from water epidemics here, Ahmedabad, my city, which used to be a dry, arid region, is now highly humid, and it is among the capital of malaria and dengue diseases in the country, because the humidity rose with the river having all year round water. This is just to give you the interconnectedness, how development is affecting. And of course, migration is an issue. Then coming to another tenet of water crisis is the physical itself, where the entire focus of economy and development is on appropriation of land. Through the land appropriation, we also do water grabbing. And that's where we need to change the discourse of development. We need to change the way we look at land, because land is valued way too high as compared to the water. So I am always talking about devaluing land to revalue water more than what is done today. And this is important to understand. I'm giving example from India here, where 30% of India's land is under degradation now. And this is because of the way we are dealing with development of land, be it urbanization, be it farming, be it industrialization, and then of course shrinking of water bodies. And we have almost forgotten that land is also soil. And I think soil is going to be the bigger concern, even if we want to conserve water, because if soil is not conserved, water is not conserved also. So this is where we need to change the understanding of water. as well as crisis, because soil crisis is not even realized. We are still not studying soil so much. Now, coming to one of the most crucial Anthropocene crisis, I will say, is the discrimination in the society, the social discrimination between the rich and the poor, the capitalistic way of looking at things. And when we want to talk about, or when we want to move towards this concept is floated by World Bank, by the way, the shared prosperity, we have to change the narrative, the way we talk about the poor people, the way we talk about the deprived, the way we talk about the middle class people. We never talk about those people who are consuming more. We need to change that narrative. We need to really start talking about the extravagant consumption or life of people. And unfortunately, those are educated and elite people. Giving an example of properties, automobiles, mobility of the people, all these contribute to the crisis. So if we really want to do something for the middle income people, for the poor people and vulnerable people, we have to also shift to talking about those who are appropriating more, those who are exploiting more. And then only there will be something left for the other. So the little activist in me also talks about there's no harm shaming and naming people who are misusing our resources. And that's where I'm giving this caption here. If we want to stop these, we have to really do something with the way we live. So I'm including myself as part of it. Then an important aspect where I think water discourse as well as water crisis can be really worked very well. And me being woman also, I can talk about it on and on. And that's the gender part. Water works or water discourses have been more patriarchal since antiquity in my society. And I think that is also at the core of problems of water management as well as adaptation to the changes which are faced. So women do bear the burden of it, but unfortunately, we don't see many women at the leadership role of it. So engendering water is extremely crucial so that voices like me, voices like narratives of ecofeminism, voices of women, voices of children, voices of other species can be brought on the board, boardroom discussions. And that's, I think, where women plays an extremely crucial role and their leadership is important. Coming to the economic crisis, and I'm giving example of agriculture here. We are increasing our farmlands, which means reducing our forest land, and 80% of the total water consumption in India itself is agricultural water. And what hurts more is when we have more food production in the country, we are still having so much of hunger. So we really need to rethink the way we look at agriculture and appropriation of water, which is subsidized in most of the agricultural thing. So if we, and this is mainly because we have moved to cash crops from food crops, and that has increased the water load, and that has also increased the groundwater depletion, and it has badly affected the crop production. And the more it is affecting the crop production, we are becoming more aggressive in drawing groundwater, and thanks to energy for that, by the way. And we are already having a loss of around 1.5% of GDP when we are having agricultural distress because of water distress. Industry, I think I'm just giving example of wastewater here, but any industry is producing waste. I mean, you name any industry and you have waste, and that's why I have just taken wastewater as an example from the industry. Because the more we are consuming water, we have to understand the more we are producing wastewater. So be it farming, be it agriculture, I mean industry, be it even domestic for that matter. And if we keep increasing our water consumption, we are increasing our wastewater production. And unfortunately, our wastewater treatment is not happening to that stage. So I think we need a new curricula on talking about wastewater by itself, because the future of wastewater, again, projected by World Bank, is nearly $3 billion USD by 2030. And I think that will also bring the whole narrative of circular water economy, which is required because we have a definite water. And the fresh water is the least in it, 0.3% of the overall. And most of it lies in the water bodies, which are getting grabbed for the urban development and also getting wasted by solid waste dumping. And I think this is where we need to really change the discourse on waste water. Coming to the energy, a lot of talk about renewable energy when we talk about climate change and we talk about other things, but in India, we are still into this coal phase of it, and we do want to reduce, but I want to bring to your notice that all the energy sector also requires fresh water, and that's where my stress is that if the energy crisis is going to also be hampered because of the water crisis, and that's where we need to rethink the interlinking of water crisis and energy crisis in future. And especially when we are increasing our production, when we are increasing our farming, it is based on our promises on increasing energy. So we are actually creating an energy demand for our industry and agriculture, which is putting extra stress on availability of water. We are getting bigger and bigger machines to draw more water. We are getting more sophisticated plants to make seawater to drinking water or fresh water for that matter, without even realizing the waste we are generating out of it. And of course, large water infrastructures for hydropower, coal for that matter, thermal power requires so much of water. So we really need to rethink the consumption of planet which we are doing, and energy becomes one of the devils in my mind. And we really need to think, how can we rephrase our energy education and talk about optimizing energy for doing any kind of activity, for that matter, optimizing our needs as well. And that's, I'm going to come to it later. But linked with capitalism, linked with development, linked with all kinds of activities which human race is doing, is the overall welfare. Even if we have more economy, even if we are growing more food, even if we have more number of millionaires in the country, we have not yet solved the problem of welfare in the country. We have one of the highest number of malnourished children, highest number of people who go hungry every night. So these are all adding to when we talk about welfare. But even if, let's say, we talk about only economy, we are already getting nearly 5% loss of GDP due to rising droughts. So that itself can be a big indicator to really rethink the way we look at GDP. And there are already talks in the country to have green domestic product, to look at the losses we are having in the environment and water and all. And to add to all this is actually this whole dynamics of urbanization, which is also actually reducing the welfare of the people. But I don't have answer to it, but I'm just bringing some numbers from where I learned this, that urbanization adds to more water stress, because rural people come to urban areas because they are water stressed there. And then if they are here, the urban infrastructure is not yet equipped to handle X number of population. And that increases the water crisis. And then the planning adds to it. We have more floods in the city, more drought in the city than ever. So these are all interlinked. That's the point I'm trying to make here. And eventually it all boils down to from welfare to well-being. And we are seeing the changes here. Coronavirus taught us a lot of things. Before that, we had SARS, and before that, so on and so forth. And people were also relating coronavirus with 100 years before the pandemic we had in the world. So the point here is, if we really want to change the narrative, health becomes a very good entry point to change the water pedagogy. Why? Because then everybody understands it's much better. So I am very keen to really talk about epidemics and pandemics, and how water epidemics constitutes to the largest number of mortality in the world. And we have still not declared it pandemic because the water epidemics are mostly felt by the people who are again burdened with the discrimination in the society. So more poor and vulnerable people are affected by it, and that's where it is not yet taken as the highest agenda in the crisis or in the climate crisis. We need to change that. And that's where I think health becomes a very important module to be taken up when we talk about climate crisis. And we can bring a change in the society through that. An important part in health is that how floods and drought increase the water epidemics, but more importantly, even all the year round, contaminated water and poor sanitation adds to it. And this comes from actually production of more wastewater in the society. And that comes from making more industry, making more agriculture. Giving an example here in India, we produce 130 times more food. But at the same time, we produce nearly 30% more waste, food waste every year. And so if we are producing more, if we are also producing more waste, and that is adding to soil contamination, water contamination, and actually it is adding to my contamination or human body or other animals' bodies contamination. And that link has to be understood because it is all one water. So if the water outside is dirty, it is dirty inside me as well. And I'm often using a very strong quote, and I really wish to use it here. And I say that this is in school. The water in the brain is actually the water in the drain. And we need to really understand that. And these are the things which I'm trying to really teach through my multiple engagements. And that's where I call pedagogy induced profession, where I take up research projects, consultancy projects with various stakeholders, whether it is corporate, government, or local communities. Then I'm also taking, a lot of people to the water systems to understand how they look at it, and also to share these aspects which I am trying to convey here to all of you as well. So that's where I also call it walk and talk water, and that's profession-induced pedagogy. So while I'm doing projects or going anywhere, I make sure that I'm interacting with any institute there, any community there, any government officials group there, to really discuss what's going on. And also, of course, to get work out of it, because being an independent, I have to be constantly looking for engagements and constantly looking for work. But in this process, what has interestingly happened is I have become a kind of a public speaker. So that has become very important profession now. And I really love to do public speaking, to be honest. So I take students, seniors to the lakes, to the rivers. And this is some picture from a recent work which I have started with pollution in Ganga. So we are tracking what plastic pollution in the river to be able to tackle plastic pollution. Just to give you an example here, on the top right is a picture where we did a studio project in architecture planning students, and we took the project to the local community to really seek their advice, and the students had to really change their designs and work according to the feedback they got from the community. Just to give you an example. Then taking students to clean the lake, and these are like regular activities. I'm not obliged to write, but I do love to write. So I'm still in the learning phase of writing. So I do write a little bit of scientific work, but I like to write more on common citizen science writings. And I'm supervising students on water. So students come from all over the country whom I supervise. But all this process actually led to last 2 years of open water education, which I curated. And we have a wonderful team of around 18 people, where we actually do Wednesdays for water. We do Friday Waters, which has 4 events every month and every Friday at 5 p.m. IST. So we have water talkies, where we show films, when water thesis club, where we get PhD scholars to talk about water thesis. Then we have water arts, where we get artists to talk about how do they interpret water and how do they communicate to the society about water. Then we have book reading, like we just had last Friday, where we had one of legend of water, I will say, Mr. Tushar Shah, to talk about groundwater in Asia. So, and then authors come and talk about their book in those sessions. Then we, on Wednesday is our scientific session, where we usually focus on the youth, who is our discussant, and we get 2 experts to talk about water. Like just after this session today, actually at 5 p.m. IST, we have biodiversity, and we are going to talk about coral reefs today. So then senior experts talk about it from policy and academia, and the students are encouraged to ask questions to them. So it's like a education, but learning and sharing more. Then Monday, we are talking about women in water, something very close to my heart. And we have formed this Water Resource Council in the Women Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Around 75 of us are there. So I'm trying to get their understanding of water, understanding of society. We are recording it. It's available in YouTube. You can observe them. And then you hear from them. What do they understand? How they have brought change on the ground in their own region. So these are some things which I thought is extremely important. And I call it that water conversations are extremely crucial for water conservation. And from there, I'm just coming to my concluding few slides here. How we can go together, all of us can start looking at how we can collaborate and start working on. And I put it in 3 different categories, let's say 3 pillars of education. And one for me definitely is the global goals. How can we teach everybody that these are our targets for planet, which we all have to do. We have to change also the way we talk about climate crisis, but at the same time, we also talk about water crisis. We also talk about how this is our larger goal. How can we do it in our city, in our neighborhood, in our country? We have to talk about it. We have to definitely give equal importance to adaptation as we give importance to mitigation. Because as I mentioned, it's about livability. If I feel good today, then I'm contributing to today and tomorrow. And that's where humans have to be really brought into the collective game. And I use health as a very good tool or indicator to enter these kind of engagements. Then accelerating adaptation, of course, I've already mentioned that we need to change this framing of the problem. And I will prefer to start from livability, then going into sustainability. And I see this ladder for me really works well. To address climate change, of course, talking about water, but definitely talking more about the other species, life on the land and life in the water. And then talking about more responsible behavior from humans. We do have those as one of the goals, but to my surprise, even in India, we do not have any budget for SDG goal number 12. So can we stress more on it, how humans can be more responsible? And this is something that has to be taught. And as I mentioned, gender to me becomes extremely important. The more women comes on board to discuss climate crisis and water crisis, I think this will naturally come. All these points which I am raising here. And we need to really change the way we look at development now. It cannot be any more economy-driven development. We definitely have to talk about ecology or water-driven development, if I have to say development as that, for that matter. We need to know these linkages between global and water. How do we do that? We have to be contextualizing it. And of course, accepting more collaborative works. At an individual decisions, we have to really go far this prisoner's dilemma. We cannot just wait and watch that if others will change, then I will change. We have to start from our change as well. And I wish to quote here from Gandhi, sitting in the land of Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. And I think we all have to really see that within ourselves. Even this little change, if I can bring in my own lifestyle and occupation, I think we are much better than we are waiting for others to change. And I think another quote from Gandhi, which matters and which will matter in the livability part of it, is there is enough for everyone. Even if I look at India, even if we receive only 4% of the world's rain and with 16% of the world's population, I think if we can really harvest that water, fresh water, if we can really use it more wisely, we still have enough for everyone. And that is something where we need to really look at how individuals' actions will matter, because we individuals go to the institutions and make decisions. If I cannot change myself, I don't think I can imagine changing the society. I cannot imagine changing the institutional norms. So this is where I will say that we have to really hammer in the society that no fresh water, no humans. So I keep telling people, and I also keep reminding myself, if coronavirus was a waterborne disease, what would have happened? And that, as I mentioned, health for me is a very important tool to enter into this water discourse. And if we can make this realized amongst us, I think we are much better in teaching water, and it becomes like a co-learning experience because everybody has something to offer. So if individuals can change, if I can change, I can also bring that changed attitude or approach to the institution or to the boardroom, as we can call. And an important change that is required is we cannot sit back as a citizen or a community that government is going to be a provider of all the water services. Yes, the constitution says that, but my action is polluting the water. So I also have to be equally responsible to make it work. So I will definitely vouch for citizen governance or community governance, as we call about, and really look at the decentralized and more people-friendly approaches than large centralized approaches, which are almost not able manageable, because adaptation is going to be a small-scale activity. Just like affect what or impact of water is a very micro-scale activity. Similarly, its resolution or adaptation is very much here and now than there and somewhere in future time. So I strongly believe in really rethinking about putting more stress on small scale projects and small community activities, small community awareness. For example, in Indian case itself, I still vouch for going for nearly 50% of any water project should be for community work than for building the infrastructure through concrete and steel and all. So this is just to give you an example where we can really make it more people friendly, because then people start owning and understanding the problem better. And an important challenge and also required in our field is actually learning to have a measurement or mapping of water systems to be able to manage it. And this will remain the crux of really taking charge of water crisis. And this is where I talk about interactive governance key to talk about integrated management. Unless and until we have good data, we are really struggling with managing it. So with these lines, I will stop my presentation here. I hope I made sense to all of you, and we can start talking about it and take the discussion further. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Mansee. That was a brilliant webinar presentation. And thank you so much for sharing your expertise on why it's important to understand water crisis in light of climate crisis and the need to step up measures to mitigate it. It was also quite interesting to know or understand the different discourses within water crisis, for example, gender disparity and economic crisis and so on. So thank you so much for shedding light on this. I think if you are ready, we can start the Q&A segment now.
Yes.
First of all, we do have a few questions in the chat box, but I'd also like to acknowledge the questions that have come through via the registration form. So I will begin with a few questions from there and also raise a few questions from the chat box. So the first question is, which level of education should induce climate to solve water crisis be taught and prioritized?
Oh, that is a very interesting question. Huh? My take will be from primary to PhD. I mean, why not? Because, children are the most vulnerable and they are suffering the most. If they are aware, I think they become stronger to adapt. So that is required, and of course, more and more research, but not science which is politicized. So when we talk about doing more research and PhD, it has to be really out of the politics, because much of the climate is more politics now than really real science. And yes, so primary to PhD at all levels.
That's a really good response. Thank you so much. Speaking of education, how can tertiary education contribute to ensuring sustainable development of water resources in the future?
That's, I think, interesting, because how tertiary education can bring sustainable development in future. I think I actually tried to answer this question through my slides when I was talking about individual and institution and global goals. When we teach about climate crisis and water crisis, first of all, I don't say climate change. I prefer to say crisis, because change does not talk about which side the change is, and we are already on the negative side of it. Important is not to scare the students about it, but also alarming them and also showing them the way. what are the ways? So good practices needs to be shown. So examples become a very important tool. Case studies become very important tool. And there are good examples all over the world where people have adapted to climate and water crisis.
Thank you. All right, just looking at the questions that are in the chat box, and I would like to encourage our audience today to please send in your questions, please send in your thoughts. If you're working within the water crisis space, share your experiences as well. So the first question is from the chat box. The first question is, are there any water cleaning activities being carried out in India? So for example, cleaning of rivers. What are your thoughts?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. A lot of water cleaning activities take place. But we have to understand this very carefully, because just now I was talking about politicizing climate crisis or water crisis. Much of the cleaning is actually coming in the gamut of, that we are doing something. I think when we talk about cleaning process, again, I would prefer to have half the budget for social awareness, where if I clean today, it is going to be dirty tomorrow again. So can we put half the budget in, empowering community to tell them not to pollute water bodies? Because otherwise it's an every year game of cleaning, because it is related to our lifestyle and occupation. We want people to consume more consumption of products means more consumption of water, means more production of waste, whether it is solid waste or whether it is liquid waste. We all know who work in water sector and climate sector and oceans and marine life, all waste in this planet goes to the water body. Simply put, there's no other way things are going anywhere in this world. They go to the water bodies. So if we want to clean them, can we reduce our production of waste? And that's where I will say cleaning is really half the job. So it is still not full job, but it is done, more politically done than genuinely done in India.
Thank you, Mansee. The next is it's just a comment. So Chisha, the attendee who unmuted and responded to your question earlier, has mentioned that she likes the idea of teaching climate change through lived experiences. Sometimes people want to see evidence in form of empirical data linking what they see to climate change. How do you incorporate such data in your teaching?
Oh, very good. Thank you so much. So I am not a macro study person. So I usually rely on good science done by others, and definitely using statistics to teach with acknowledging others' work. But as I mentioned, when we are really teaching X kind of people, we need different kind of, information. But when we talk about PhD to primary, of course, our data has to change. But giving big numbers is not a difficult task to people. But if we are teaching to MPhil and masters, or let's say executive training programs, I think we can really go in deep into giving them good data or large data also to work on, and also to show and discuss. But when we are teaching to primary, middle school, we can really keep it simple for them. And we, as teachers, we have to learn to decode the statistics into qualitative lines, and that's where the crux is. Still convey the same message, but putting it in words also helps. So that has been my way, because I'm more a micro, I will say, study scholar. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Mansee. The next question is, do you think behavioral and attitudinal change of all spectrum of society will solve the global water issues?
Yes, I'm a strong believer, and I think that is out of optimism. We live with hope, and hope is the most important medicine, by the way, in planet. So, we cannot change what's happening globally. But as I was mentioning with that little graph, that sustainability, climate change is something very distant. Something has to change in the world. But if I'm able to change something just around me, in my neighborhood, in my community, in my known people, it makes my life better, and that's what will matter eventually. And all these little dots here and there, we can connect them and we can see global impact there. But I mean, I'm not really having answer that if we all start doing it, we can postpone the climate change or, rise in the temperature. But water crisis can be adapted to. And that is where I was, discussing this or distinguishing between climate change mitigation or climate crisis mitigation to adapting to the changes which are coming. So I'm a strong believer that our little do's and don'ts can really make a big difference. At least our livability will change, and that is what matters. When I'm saying our, I'm again really want to make a disclaimer here. It's not about the well-educated and elite people, because we are not still facing climate change. And I can say it very embarrassingly that I may not face climate change in my entire life because I can afford everything. And that is where a big problem lies. So when we are talking about small changes, actually poor people don't need to bring any change in their lives. I need to bring a change in my life. We need to bring a change in my life because we know the problem. We know the macro problem. We know that there are micro solutions. If we are not changing, we cannot really expect any change happening in the society.
That's a really valid point, Mansee. Thank you for sharing that. We do have a hand raised by Abdullah who would like to unmute and ask their question, if that's fine.
Which one?
Hello.
Yeah. Yes, go for it.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for the remarkable presentation. I really appreciate the knowledge that you exchanged with us. I'm a master scholar who is doing a master's in sustainable agriculture and food security, and I'm from Pakistan. So we come from a region where about 80 to 85% or even 90% farmers are smallholder farmers, and only 10% farmers are large-scale farmers. So you mentioned agriculture, and I really appreciate that. So what do you suggest? Should we, obviously we need to make change everywhere, but should we target the large-scale farmers or should we target the small-scale farmers in terms of imparting education about using water better? Because we need to bear in mind that the smallholder farmers, they don't have the resources or the finance to inculcate practices such as drip irrigation or improved water practices. So which segment do we target? And then can you please elaborate on how do we target them? Thank you.
Yeah, I think very pertinent question. And that also applies to, by the way, urban and rural and educated and non-educated, degree educated. And that is where I think now it's high time that we talk more or we educate more the rich people. So in that case, large farm holders, because they are small in numbers, so they can be really reached out and addressed better. And we need to really have a very sophisticated way of teaching those, because we also are dealing with more educated, more arrogant people as well. The moment we talk about rich people, large holders, likewise, even in cities, we have to talk more to urban elites than talking about the urban poor. Implicit is, of course, to address the problems of the small farm holders. But even if we really inform them, they are on the receiving side. They are more impacted than the large farm holders, because large farm holders have bigger machines. So they are drawing more water. They are going for cash crops, and that's why also they are becoming richer and all. So if their mind, their heart, I will say mind is already working too much. If we can do some heart-changing programs, but definitely we need to redesign our approach of awareness to people who matter more. Unfortunately, for a long time, those who are affecting more are teaching those who are affected more. So I will definitely like to discuss how we can design a pedagogy for large farm holders, of course, the rich people as well. I mean, I don't have direct answer to it. But why not tell them about the energy consumption, which is affecting, because they draw more groundwater and the poor farmers get more affected. They grow cash crops and they spoil the soil and the water, and the poor farmers get more affected. And what all eventually they are getting? I mean, what is the point of having a big house and a big land when you go out of your house and you see poor people all over? So these are little things where we have to really bring a change in the heart. I think we need more conscience education than science education for already educated people. And we need cogent knowledge, where I say commonsensical knowledge more than actually science again. I'm no one defying the role of science, but I think we have too much of science, which is missing common sense and conscience. And if we want to shake the educated, the rich, the large farm holder, we have to take, refuge in education of common sense and education of conscience. I mean, moral science for that matter. I mean, I really don't know. We have to sit together and design some course like this. But I'm hammering at every platform. I mean, I just don't care whether all are rich sitting there. I will start hammering that we have to change.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Abdullah, for your question. As Mansee has mentioned, she is open to having this conversation and continuing having this conversation with you, with all the Commonwealth scholars and alumni. With this, I would end the Q&A session now. Mansee, just to let you know, that has been going, we have had some really great conversation happening in the chat box by our attendees, and thank you so much for your webinar presentation. Having said that, if you could just please move to the next slide.
Yeah.
Yes, as I mentioned, Mansee is more than happy to continue conversations with scholars and alumni, working or not working within the space. But if you're interested to know more about the topic, about how you can get involved in spreading awareness about water crisis, be it any sector that you're studying or working in, please do get in touch with Mansee. Mansee is also working on hosting webinars every Wednesday on these topics, and she's more than happy to share this information on her LinkedIn as well as in the CSE's Knowledge Hub on strengthening resilience and response to crisis. So please do get in touch with Mansee. You can see her LinkedIn name is on the screen, and so is her email address and the website links as well. Before we end, Mansee, would you like to summarize your presentation?
Yes. Yeah, thank you so much, Eva, and thank you so much for organizing this talk. To be honest, I just looked at our email. We started this conversation 5th of June, so it's almost a year we were preparing for this day. So thank you so much, first of all, to you and, of course, the entire Commonwealth Scholarship fraternity. And thanks to all the participants who have joined here today and who are going to really rethink and also look at opportunities which we can do something together. I really look forward to a lot of collaborative work, and I think this is the key to doing something good and also bringing a change. And eventually we have to change our mind before the climate changes too much. So thank you so much. Please get in touch.